好，大家接近午安了哈。但是呢，我相信呢，接下来这一场专题演讲我相信一定会给各位也是大开眼界哈。就刚才我们的林院长还有前一场的都非常的精彩。那今天呢，我们接下来这一场呢，是由印度的克里希那穆提教育中心的这个一位校长，好，他来为我们做专题演讲。那我过去在看这个实验教育的国外的介绍的时候，其实就有提到这个克里希那穆提的学校哈。那他在美国，他主要是印度，然后他在美国也有然后他们在英国也有很大的影响。那我不知道各位是不是听过这个克里希那穆提，它是在台湾来讲叫做新世纪的这个运动非常重要的一个精神的这个导师吧哈。那事实上他在欧洲的一个很长期的一个叫做神智学的这个运动当中，他也有一个相当独特的角色，好，那他们那时候就是希望就是欧洲人希望在印度，然后他们感受到东方的这种灵性精神的珍贵，好，所以他们希望能够引进这个东方的这些精神的修炼，好，到欧洲，那有一个这样非常长的传统。那克里希那穆提他就是他们非常敬佩的一位精神导师。那么，然后在这个克里希那穆提，后来他很重视的就是教育，他自己有一整套他的这个教育方案。那今天我们的主讲者呢，他从1991年开始就是担任这个印度克里希那穆提基金会他们所办的学校的校长哈。然后他这个担任了将近20年，然后后来他们就开始去发展一些更新的这个教育的形式那然后到了这个2012年就成立了这个叫做 Palar 的这样一所学校。那它是一所非常独特的学校。我想待会儿我们听到我们主讲者的分享就可以进一步的去了解到他们的这个想法是什么样，然后怎么样去做实作。那的确，它是跟我们现有的所接触的台湾的各式各样的学校都非常不一样的一所学校。好，那他今天的讲题就是叫做在这个快速变迁当中，快速变迁时代当中的这个教学，我们怎么做可以来回应现在这样一个快速变迁的时代。好，那我们就欢迎今天的主讲者来为我们主讲。OK， 谢谢。
Namaste, good morning. It's a pleasure to be in the Taiwan Experimental Education Conference, and it is quite amazing what we are able to do in today's world. I was planning to travel to Taiwan, but then decided against it due to various circumstances. But still, despite all the difficulties, thanks to the technology that's available, I can be with all the participants. I thank the Center for this invitation and for this opportunity to share some thoughts in my journey as a teacher, as the head of an institution which attempted some changes, and share my thinking behind this. As we proceed, my talk is going to be in two halves. One part of it will be about teacher education, what we attempted in our school. Now I'll say a little bit about our school so you get a sense of that. And then the second will be about the new school. In the visual behind you see the background, and that's the center, that's the school. And you will be able to get a sense of how we applied various ideas, various notions. So first, I'd like to introduce Krishnamurti Foundation to you and the teachings of Krishnamurti. J. Krishnamurti was quite a radical thinker who, in 1929, disbanded a group of followers and called it and said that truth is a pathless land. You can't come to truth through following anybody. So right at the beginning, very early, he eliminated this notion of followership, of authority, fear, and inquiry as a completely different movement other than thought. So you can get a lot of information on this on the web. In India, in 1929, he set up the first school, the Rishi Valley School, which is extremely well known. In fact, it's the #1 school, residential school in India. It is recognized as a center of excellence.
Sorry, Dr. Gautama. We are not sure whether you forget to share your PowerPoint because now we cannot see the contents of your PowerPoint.
I will put in the PowerPoint. I'll put in the PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put in the PowerPoint. 1 second.
We can see the PowerPoint. So please move on. Thank you.
Okay. So I was just introducing the center to you. And I think it's important I introduce the center because it is not very well known in your part of the world, I think. So that was the first school. And one of the most important things that Krishnamurti said as more schools came up, one in Chennai, one in Rajghat near the ancient city of Varanasi, one in Pune, one in Bangalore, he said that each school must work out its own approach. So it was quite clear to him that schools cannot just be replicated, but the schools have to think through what they're going to do and evolve their own approach. So this itself is a radical new idea. So let me begin by saying that I see that in today's schools everywhere, there is a certain large pattern, and the large pattern is one which says that all schools must have trained teachers, and you need a certificate. This is the direction of organized society. It follows the colonial movement, the Industrial Revolution. The teaching program is largely content heavy, and teachers are trained. They have a wide range of exposure to philosophies and approaches and strategies. But when teachers go into schools to teach, or even for their practice teaching, they find the practice on the ground is very different from all the philosophies and all the good approaches that they have learned in the colleges, teacher training institutes. There is the pressure of exam. There is the pressure, anxiety in society that the children must fit into society, become viable members, economic members. And this anxiety seems to influence the process of education. Student-friendly educational practices struggle to coexist with the pressure of exam results. Results matter more than anything else. For teachers entering the field, how much of learning in context of the school is meaningful and necessary, and how much of learning away from the school in a different context is desirable. So this is one question that one encounters in schools. And I started my life in school migrating from an engineering and research background, and was appointed as the head of a Krishnamurti school in 1990. This is a beautiful school in Chennai, and it had limited number of students, 350 students, and it was on a large campus. My role as the head of the school was to pay attention to teacher induction, teacher recruitment, keeping the direction of the school intact, the direction of student-friendly, fear-free atmosphere, and yet an education which was helping the individual understand himself and society simultaneously. We in this school moved from the age-wise segregated classroom to multi-age environments. So normally we find as development happens, particularly in tribal societies, remote locations where you have single teacher schools. But this is very much like the schools we had, say, 100 years ago or 200 years ago. You had small schools, you had a teacher, they were all multi-age schools. The one movement around the world which has resisted this has been the Montessori experience. Madame Montessori, to her great credit, stood against the industrial juggernaut. The industrial juggernaut had a very big influence on education. And she held on to this multi-age education, fewer transitions in the 10, 12 years of schooling. We moved in that direction because we thought that this every age shifting of children was not serving the purpose that we had in mind. And we could do this because we were a small school and we are also a school where the teachers are invited to think, to propose, to change. So we did this. And 5 years later, we did it in the primary school, grade 1 to 4, then we did it from grade 5 to 7. By the time we had done the shift in grade 5 to 7, we were instantly aware that new teachers who are going to come in are not going to come in with any experience of a multi-age environment unless they have been in Montessori schools. And also our approach was somewhat different from the Montessori approach. It could not just be transplanted immediately. Therefore, we had to start thinking about how are we going to bring in new teachers. Teachers will have to come into school at different times. Teachers will leave. And when we bring in new teachers, what will happen to them if they encounter this multi-age environment? So to sustain the multi-age environment, it became necessary for us to think of school teaching. Now, this is where we did something interesting, I would say. We crafted a 3-month teacher training program for new teachers who would come into school. And the interesting thing that we did was, we did not have experts or teachers who were whose time could be fully devoted to this program. And it was quite a daunting task. So we crafted this whole program so that there could be one mentor for each trainee. And we had few trainees only, 4 or 5. And each trainee could have was an adult and could take initiative. Now, that was very central to this whole approach, that the teacher could take initiative and responsibility for his decisions. In effect, therefore, each trainee created their own learning program. Each trainee was asked what questions would they like to answer and how, through reading, through attending classes, discussion. This meant the trainee was expected to be self-directed or at least show some sense of agency. The table below, and I'm going to share the table with you, and each trainee had a mentor and the week was scheduled with observation and assemblies and classes. So this was the kind of training sheet, planning sheet which each of the trainees filled up. You can immediately wonder whether this would really work, but let's go along a little bit and then we can discuss it if there are questions. Each human being comes with their own background and therefore they are capable of doing some things, they have some questions. When they come to a school which is considered alternative by many people, they already expect that this will be a child-friendly school with a big difference. And how do we induct this person? So rather than assume that this person must be told a full list of things, we started by asking what are the questions that you would like to answer? What question would you think you need to understand to be able to function in this environment? And it was quite interesting. When people had this opportunity, they raised many questions. How would I conduct a class in a multi-age environment? We asked them also, what kind of support would you like? Because by this time the internet had arrived, 2006, and you had access to all the information in the world. So there was no need to assume that only the people in the school could be your resource. And so providing the space for each individual to define their program was one of the big steps that we took. So having answered these questions, then the school also said, look, there are some things that we would like to see that you learn. For instance, this is a Krishnamurti Foundation school. You must have some sense of what direction he set for education. And this we can do through books, videos, and handbooks. We can provide this for you. So we would like you to also answer questions with regard to the philosophy, the school history. Each school has a history. There are norms which are there in place. And the new teacher who comes in must become familiar with this. This is quite common. What to do if there are situations suddenly one encounters a difficult situation with regard to a child or with regard to some question that somebody asks, either a colleague or a staff member or a parent, or what do I do? So there would be resources available for this, the teachers and the research that's available for common problems. A child does not want to work in the class. What do I do with this child? So, how to anchor a class? Now, this is also something that was very important. So, during this 3-month program, after 6 to 8 weeks, the new trainee would have to prepare a lesson plan and start anchoring sessions. There would be feedback. And after the feedback, the person would be required to take the feedback into account and then redo classes, do another class. And by the time the training period ended, they would have run 6 to 8 classes. They would have also had many books that had been suggested to them for their reading, and they would do a book review. And at the end of this program, which I call a distributed resource teacher training program, they had only 1 hour conversations with the mentors every week. That's it. It was not a heavy hand-holding program. It placed the agency, the finding the motivation to learn, etc., squarely with the person who was coming in. If a person is an adult and wanting to come in, this person had to exercise agency rather than become a recipient. So, right from the beginning, the program was one where the trainee had to be active, thinking, raise questions, look for answers, etc. School was not just about academic classes. Trainees would need to understand the qualities in the atmosphere and all those elements that support the learning experience of the young learners. In addition to observing assemblies and special programs, trainees would eat with staff and students in the dining hall. This was necessary in our school. Everybody ate together. When one could grow aware of the multiple exchanges and simultaneously take place. That time simultaneously many things are happening. The program offered immersion in the school atmosphere to understand the nuances and the elements that went into creating a school. But this is quite interesting. The previous 2 speakers, Dr. Smith spoke about immersion. And I think it is by strange coincidence I used the same word here. So during this period, they would observe along, I mentioned exactly what they would do. Now, I'm going to dwell a little bit on the history. You see, there is the paradigm that's existing, and we have heard the last 2 speakers speak about the very strong hold the paradigm has. There are many forces because of which the paradigm exists. The socio-economic, political fabric of life today is one of the reasons, but there's one other deeper reason. And I think probably the walkabout papers, the experience of the Bushmen in Australia, the Maori experience, the tribal schools experiences in India and elsewhere, what happened in the earlier societies, we have not been able to tap into the wisdom of this. And probably this has not been possible because the system is very large and very powerful and is very difficult to change a very large system. So in India, which has had 5,000 years of unbroken historical documentation, very old culture, very large subcontinent. Before the British rule, before colonial hand sat heavily on the large subcontinent, India was contributing 27% to the global GDP. And this has been reduced to 1 to 2% in the last 200 years. So something was happening which was making this economic participation, this creativity, this production, everything possible. Now I'm going to quote from Mahatma Gandhi, who spoke in Chatham House in London in 1931. He says, "I say without fear of my figures being challenged successfully that today India is more illiterate than it was 50 or 100 years ago. And so is Burma, because the British administrators, when they came to India, instead of taking hold of things as they were, began to root them out. They scratched the soil and began to look at the root and left the root like that. And the beautiful tree perished. The village schools were not good enough for the British administrator. So he came out with his program. Every school must have so much paraphernalia, building, and so forth." This is what Gandhi said in 1931. One may wonder what kind of education took place in India before the British rule that allowed India to be so successful economically, academically, and in every sphere, including art, music, and dance. What kind of training did the teachers receive before they began their practice? How did the 100,000 schools of Madras Presidency and Calcutta Presidency manage the requirement of the pupils and the teachers? There were 100,000 schools in the Madras Presidency and Calcutta Presidency. The British records show this. They were completely surprised at the large number of schools. At the macro level, one can say that learning and work of the population created a flourishing economic base. Learning in context versus learning in the classroom has always been debated. Learning and work seem to have gone hand in hand for the viable citizen in earlier times in India. In a rapidly changing environment, do we need to revise this question, revisit this question again? It became obvious during the 2 years of lockdown and online classes and online communication that we do not need the paraphernalia of school buildings, libraries, play fields when it comes to just information and knowledge and even learning some skills. I think this is out, and as teachers and as policymakers, we need to confront this. Technological advancements today allow for meaningful interactions over vast distances. We can instantly see the value of sending a short text, a video message over vast distances, and also use emails and video conferencing as we are doing today. This saves us energy and a lot of time. It's no longer required to meet a friend, to walk to meet a friend, unless one has to. It throws into question how much learning happens within the physical setting of school and how much can happen outside school using digital tools. This applies as much to adults as the teachers as the young learners. Therefore, how do we see the role of the teacher in a world which is intensely competing for our attention? As we attempt to address the question, we can see that there are many other questions that follow. What is the meaning of education in a technologically cross-connected world with information at one's fingertips? Is teaching or enabling learning a journey of the heart, or is it mere intermediary step to helping the young fit into the existing world? What is the meaning of the word learning in such a context? How significant is knowledge in the world where it doubles every 2.5 years? That's what people say now. In a world where we are required to be lifelong learners, what is the context that the school must provide for the young learners as well as the teacher learners? With artificial intelligence bringing in dramatic changes, how is one to orient oneself as a learning teacher? In attempting to address these questions, or rather living with these questions, that institutions and individuals will enter a zone of multiple transitions. It's not just one transition. Teacher training is an activity of sustaining solutions, sustaining institutions. When we do teacher training, is it merely for the trainee to repeat what has already been done for 100 years? Or do institutions wish to invite teachers into a journey of change and initiative and new attempts? Should the narratives of change also form a part of the teacher training process? How is the intelligence in each human being to be awakened? So I'm leaving this as an incomplete set of questions. We can take it up for discussion if there are any questions at the end of my talk. In the year 2000, I stumbled upon some insights that school education around a new curriculum could happen in a different way, not just around subjects, healthy, safe living, resourcefulness, accessing information, right thinking and decision making. Working together and understanding feelings seems to be at the heart of human well-being, while also being needed for work, also needed for learning subjects and developing skills. I have included this document as an appendix to my paper. Anybody who is interested, you're most welcome to look at it. Due to a strange set of circumstances, I was given the work of starting a new school under the umbrella of Krishnamurti Foundation India, 80 kilometers from Chennai, a city of about 10 million. The work involved laying out the campus, defining the architecture, pedagogy, and seeing that the school was environmentally, socially, and financially viable. As I had mentioned earlier, Krishnamurti had said that each school must work its own approach. Not only was this revelatory, it provided a rationale for attempting something different. So a new Krishnamurti school came into existence, and I will share with you some of the thinking that went into this. You can see the name Pathshala is not only in English, it's also in Tamil and in Hindi, Devanagari script. In India, in every Indian language, Pathshala means school. So we chose this as the name of the school. The guiding metaphors for this, the small is beautiful. E.F. Schumacher says this, and the flower is only made of non-flower things. You have a beautiful, fragrant, beautiful looking flower. It is not only, it's made of non-flower things. Thich Nhat Hanh. Now, Pathshala emerged out of the work of the school where I was principal for 18 years. We had moved the junior school into multi-age. We had moved the middle school into multi-age. We had developed a special teacher senior school program in 97. And we had also developed our own teacher training center, teacher training program in 2007. So you can see there are many initiatives that grew in the school. And as teachers, we had learned that we could bring about change, not only change in our school, in our classroom, but change across the school, and that we could sustain this. All these 4 changes are still being sustained in the school. So the key features in Pathshala. First is Dunbar's number, which says our 150 is a special number where everybody will know everybody and relationships will be different. So it was designed with 120 students and about 25 teachers as the base setting in a residential school, and this provided tremendous opportunity. We shifted the nomenclature from teacher and student to educator learners and learner educators. People shared daily tasks in the dining hall, in other areas, in the living spaces, and everybody was a participant. The student was not just a student who was a recipient, but was a valuable member of the community. And the educator was a learner as well, somebody who was learning while both were learners and both were contributing to the learning of others. Some processes were stated very early. One of them was randomization. We know that human society, we tend to gather together among the familiar, in the familiar, and avoid that which is even remotely unfamiliar. So as a part of the classroom functioning in other places, there was a certain element of randomization which encouraged engagement with different people. And engagement builds relationships and also builds resilience. Multi-age classrooms, which legitimized differing abilities and allowed respectful coexistence, not just valuing the capacity of somebody to just know more or do things faster, but also how this person collaborated with others, how this person was a resource for other people. Conversations. The Krishnamurti schools are all steeped in a culture of dialogue and discussion. All the time there are conversations among individuals, in small groups and in large groups, and there are contexts available for airing one's thoughts and arguments and listening to others. So a careful bundle of coherent elements was put together as for the defining principles, and I share this with you. So the form of the classroom was changed. We had only L-shaped classrooms. We had multi-age environments. We had embraced the constructivist approach as well as the self-study approach. Energy, we had moved only towards solar energy. It was a big campus. It was a wild campus, and we needed energy which could be also sustainable, renewable, and also that which was reliable. Sanitation, we moved towards ecological sanitation. We have only dry composting toilets on the campus because we have water at 20 feet below the ground, plenty of water. Some of the organizing principles were very interesting, that we moved from teacher-directed towards self-directed learning. This comes out of Maurice Gibbon's work in Walkabout Papers. The teacher became the educator learner and the student became the learner educator. There's a symmetry. The decentralized and participation of the teacher. The teacher was treated as a responsible human being who could participate, who could question, who could make proposals, and listening, questioning, respect, finding out for oneself, inquiry and dialogue. These come out of the teachings of Krishnamurti. These became the scaffolding elements for the establishment of the school. I will share with you some visuals about the school so you get a sense. The architecture has a different visual signature with roofs and gables, roofs and arches. You can see what the roofs look like, the buildings all. The children also work on the land along with whoever else is working there. We have floor seating only. The same round table is what people sit around and eat. Similar round table is there in the classroom as well. The buildings are at a little distance from each other, so people have to walk. This is how a classroom looks. This is one of the buildings with the beautiful blue sky in the background. So these are the kind of organizing principles with which one of the essential elements that we brought into the school right in the beginning was that that we had ongoing learning of the educator-learner. Every week we have sessions, which, okay, I'll stop this. Every week there are learning programs. These are programs that are anchored by teachers. We discuss issues which are concerned with the learning. We discuss issues which are concerned with problems that people encounter or with new ideas that they have encountered, being in touch with many places. Small group conversations make us think of the various situations encountered in the school, also invite listening to multiple experiences. The sessions end usually with somebody attempting to pull together the threads. The conversations are not conclusive as they are part of ongoing conversations. The outcomes may be intended learning of immediate relevance. However, it is understood that there may be learning that may not be verbalized or directly of immediate relevance. If the teacher has to create that strange atmosphere where learning can happen, this is a phrase from J. Krishnamurti, along with colleagues, then some things are self-evident. The teacher cannot do it alone. There must be no fear of ridicule or punishment. Learning through attempting and making effort will mean that error and mistakes may happen, but will not be put down. There will be space for initiative for learners. There will be possibility of different pace of learning and also space to share together. And there has to be ongoing learning for the teachers. This is an arduous attempt and is only possible on a daily basis with attention and alertness to the events and the exchanges happening in the present. It's only growing and learning teachers who can create a school where the young will get a glimpse of a wholesome way of learning, wholesome way of living and working. And what can be more meaningful for a group of teachers to be able to share and learn from each other as equals. I'll end with a small quote. One may doubt that a school can be run without central authority, but one really does not know because it has never been tried. Surely in a group of true educators, this problem of authority will not arise. When all are endeavoring to be free and intelligent, cooperation with one another is possible at all levels. To those who have not given themselves over deeply and lastingly to the task of right education, the lack of a central authority may appear to be an impractical theory. But if one is completely dedicated to right education, then one does not require to be urged, directed, or controlled. Intelligent teachers are pliable in the exercise of their capacities, attempting to be individually free. They abide by the regulations and do what is necessary for the benefit of the whole school. Serious interest is the beginning of capacity, and both are strengthened by application. This is from J. Krishnamurti, Writing in Education and Significance of Life, Chapter 5. Thank you very much. I am not trying to be too tight in my presentation. I hope I managed to communicate some elements of my Thank you.
非常感谢，我们的讲者哈，Gautama，他跟我们的分享，他其实有一篇文章，如果大家有 download 那个连线的话，他这整篇文章，他刚才这整篇文章其实我们都可以看到。不知道大家刚才听的感觉怎么样？我们在前一个 session 就是那个林崇新院长讲的师资的问题，好，在我们现在这一场的这个演讲，看起来 它完全不是问题。好，不知道大家有没有这个感受哈？还有就是非常多在我们看起来非常困难，然后很难做的事情，在他们那边都可以做。好，譬如说混龄的学习，还有譬如说这个学生他是学生，他也是老师哈。那老师呢，他是教育者，但是他同时也是学生啊。那他们是同时非常平等的一起的学习啊，诸如此类，在他的这个学校里面的话就是一个日常。那这个真的是非常令我们大开眼界。好的，那我们听了刚才他的这个分享，不知道大家有没有什么问题？这边有网络大家现场好，我们就请您好这一位。So now we are taking questions. Yeah. 好，请。
Hello, Director. My name is Afonso. 讲中文就可以了。好，但我准备英文，不好意思，我想直接跟他分享，可以吗 ？Okay. I love Krishnamurti. He changed my life. Thank you for my question is how to bring the spiritual lesson into school and how to train teacher to teach spiritual lessons. Thank you. That is my question.
谢谢嘎德玛先生。因为其实我在政大教育学院博士班就读的时候，我们的教育哲学专题就是读课式的书籍，一生的学习。那课式在一生的学习里面处理的最特别就是爱这个议题，它有很特殊的见解。那我想了解一下，在印度的这个小学校里面，老师怎么处理自己爱的问题，怎么对孩子讲解爱的问题？那课式的理念是不是有在这个学校里面产生影响，或者有灌注在这个学习的过程中？谢谢。
好，谢谢，很棒的问题。好，那我想我也来问一个比较肤浅的问题，因为我们对于印度的这个教育真的了解的比较少，所以也想请教我们的讲者，就是譬如说他的这一所学校，它是一个私立学校吗？那么他们如何招生？因为它又是一个混龄的学校，差不多120几个学生，那他们怎么样招生？我有上他们的网站去看他们招生。他说他可以去登记，但是去登记申请了不一定能够入学好像还要经过一些这个面谈。所以到底他们实际在行政上面的运作是怎么样怎么样招生，经过一个什么样的过程？他们怎么决定哪些学生可以进来？一年可以有几个学生？那么学生他如何毕业然后他们的薪水如何等等像这些一些很实务性的这个问题，我也非常的好奇，也来请教。
Thank you. Yeah, let me take the first set of questions regarding the teachings of Krishnamurti as well as spiritual education and love first. Krishnamurti spoke for almost 60 years and he wrote many books. His teachings, he remained right to the end, saying that he was not an authority and people had to discover the answers to their questions themselves. Now, this is a big help because normally the voice of the adult becomes an authoritarian voice for the child. To the teachers, he said, get off the pedestal. And now this is possibly one of the most difficult things. We expect the teacher to be an expert. We expect the teacher to be somebody who's going to control and monitor everything that goes on. The teacher needs to set the right atmosphere, but also enter into an equal relationship with children, which is not a domineering relationship. This itself is the single biggest challenge in a Krishnamurti school. Now, it's not as if everybody who comes in is perfectly oriented and is not making any mistakes. In fact, in this area, it is very difficult to be sure when you are answering a question, when you are giving a reply, when you are asking somebody not to do something because it might harm somebody else, you are never sure whether you are exercising authority or not. So this is quite a challenge. The teacher is on his or her toes and learning and watching and observing oneself as much as the situation outside. The teacher is not only a director of what's happening outside. Now, whenever we have doubts, or if somebody says, look, I have a question, you give me the answer. If it has got to do with, do religions make a difference or religions divide people, then one can say what one feels like, but one can also say, if you're interested, please read what Krishnamurti has to say. Please read what other thinkers have to say. We have something called culture classes and contemporary studies classes, and when open discussions happen, culture and class teachers' periods, people can bring up any question. So the world around is quite complicated. It doesn't restrict itself just to subjects. Having space for this kind of conversation, and tentatively where the adult is not forcing his or her view on the child, I think creates some space in the mind of the child. And this is one of the things we attempt to do. Second, yes, we are private schools. We work within the system. In India, we have government schools and we have private schools. The private schools are fee-funded. They have some degree of autonomy over how they function. But in terms of the fees that they pay, they collect, and in terms of the salaries that they pay, there are some regulations. And we have to manage within this. So our schools, therefore, have this constraint. They are not funded by the government. We have, in fact, no support from the government for our schools, financial support. However, our schools have also made significant impact on government schooling. In the Rishi Valley School, they brought about the system of ABL, activity-based learning for the junior classes in the rural schools. Many, many states in India picked this up. There are multi-age schools and government schools in many states. It has gone in many other countries, in Africa and other places as well. In the school, our multi-age approach in the middle school, the kind of processes we used and discovered for ourselves, they went across to the government, 36,000 schools, 16,000 schools in 1 year. The government was very happy to learn from our institutions and apply them. We cannot directly be involved in these things, but we can share what we have discovered and contribute that for the larger good of the nation and larger. Yes, if people wish to apply to be teachers or they look for positions, we have the constraint. It's a residential school. We have only that many beds where people can sleep. So we don't try to select people. We look at the number of people who are interested. Also, the context is a large campus where you have to walk, which is, we have floor seating and we have dry toilets. We are not yet so popular that we have a very large number of people whom we have to say no to, which is a good thing in the long run for a school like ours.
谢谢 ，Thank you very much。大家还有没有其他的问题关于他们这个学校？那可能我继续来请教我们的讲者，就是现在这个学校是那个混龄的嘛，好，是很多年龄一起上，所以它是1到7年级。那么学校有这个规划吗？是1到7年级就过了就可以了，还是学校是不是觉得还可以有继续往上到高中啊，类似这样的学校，就是他们升学和进一步的这个发展的想象是怎么样？在学校里面提供学生什么样子的一个学习，还有未来生涯发展的想象？以上请教。
Okay, the grade 1 to 7 was in the day school in which I worked in Chennai. from 1990 December to 2009 May. So that was a day school which ran from kindergarten to 12. In Pathshala, we don't have from grade 1 to 7. In fact, above grade, we have grade 5 to grade 12. So 5 and 6 sometimes are together, 5, 6, 7 are sometimes together. The idea is to provide a little elbow room for people to learn from each other and to legitimize the fact that knowing more or knowing less does not take away your respect. I think that's most critical, to learn to respect, to learn to try out, to make mistakes, not be put down for it. To build the resilience and the courage inside is the very important thing. Second thing is this whole notion of collaboration. Collaboration cannot grow just in a vacuum. For instance, in the dining hall, when people are serving, when people are eating, somebody will help somebody. The dishwashing is something we share. So if one person is not there, suddenly somebody else will volunteer. So these are wonderful life experiences for young people. You see? And we are not sure if how good these are going to be in their future life. We can't measure it like that. But certainly it builds a certain kind of quality within, which allows them to participate in society in a dignified and a good way.
OK， 所以真实生活的这个互动哈，还有混龄的真实生活互动，这些本身就是他们学习非常非常重要的这个资源。好的，我们再看看现场还有没有伙伴。好，这边请。
就是相对性简单的问题，但是我觉得还蛮关键的。第一个我想知道的是，我们刚提到很多的是 teacher pipeline， 所以就是所谓的教师的一个部分。然后我想要知道的是，我们的那些当地的我们的老师，他们是从哪里来，他们怎样受训练？那他们是不是有所谓的一些 common core？ 在美国的训练里面是有一些 common core 的里面，或者是在印度的制度，因为我不太懂印度的，我想知道多一些，他们是不是有这样的一个，就是一个。这是一个可能是政府有一个控制，然后你必须要去 apply 这些，然后他才能有这样的教育资格，或者是因为他是私立学校，他可以避免于政府的受制，然后他有其他的一些管道，然后成立自己的师培系统。那第二个我想要请教的是，那在我们教育领导以及管理学方面，那其实我刚刚听到一个很棒的，就是我们有3个月的教师训练，而且 in-house teacher training。那我觉得是很棒的是，怎么样能够让现场的老师可以持续不断的学习？我很希望能够听取我们印度这边的意见，也可以来我们做台湾的参考。谢谢。
我也讲中文好了，不好意思。那个我想问说，因为刚才好像有听到一个关键字说，怎么让老师停止教学？他刚才是说老师下台了，可能我听到的翻译是这样子，就是怎么让老师，因为他会说。因为老师就是一个权威嘛，那其实，在台湾其实这个很难改变。那我想知道说，那印度怎么去，跟老师沟通，还是说这是因为文化跟文化之间的一个差异，所以想听取那个执行长的一些建议，怎么卸下来老师的权威，这样子让学生跟老师平等。
So may I take these three questions?
Yes.
Thank you. You know, these are really thoughtful questions you're asking me, and I'll try and give you my answers, but maybe I can't conclude in any way in terms of my answers. One is that the system is very big and it has a great momentum. And the seeds of change in the system, you know, anytime you attempt to do something which is different from what is normal, what is happening in the larger system, there will always be resistance. And the resistance overpowers any good ideas very quickly. The empire strikes back is a very well-known statement. You see, it's very difficult to change a big system. But there are moments, there are points where something new is valuable, a new approach is valuable within the system, and it also has seeds of a completely different orientation. Completely different direction. I think locating these has been some of the things that one sees glimpses of in what I have spoken about. You see, you want to have a child-friendly atmosphere. You want to have an atmosphere without fear. At the same time, you want to stick to the curriculum, given the grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. And you want to have very sharp indicators for passing, failing, and for invalidating young people the whole thing is a cauldron. The system has to somehow yield a little bit to create a more conducive environment. And the system can't do that. So this initiative has to come from within schools. They have to take the initiative of locating these special points of change which are in their hands and see if they can do it even within their own schools. You know, change is very possible for a single teacher, but it's very difficult for a whole school even to adopt change. It's not easy at all. It involves a huge amount of work and collaboration and restructuring and answering the difficult questions. So, as regards getting off the pedestal, I'll take that one first. You see, we don't know how to get off the pedestal that easily. We know how to talk from a point of knowledge, of a point of authority. We know that very well. India too, it is a problem. I'm sure it should be a problem in many places where you have to show respect. For instance, if somebody were to ask a question, we would consider it as an affront unless the question is asked very gently, very easily. The American style of raising a question would be considered disrespectful in many cultures, including Indian culture, ancient Indian culture. But Krishnamurti said, question everything. So it's embedded in the philosophy of the school. We are protected by our philosophical underpinnings, which say question everything. So it's not illegitimate to raise questions. At the same time, what is the quality of relationship where we can talk as equals, where the world of feeling, where the world of the big questions, environment, sustainability, war, conflict, the gender discriminations, how is it possible for us to discuss as equals? I don't have an authoritative position on this. I have found 10-year-olds being capable of very deep and profound statements. Do we really have the space as human beings, not as system, to be able to listen to somebody with deep care and respect without feeling that I am superior and I know more? Now, this is a crisis point for us as individuals. And I think living with this crisis is necessary if there is to be any change. Also, this means in the school, we have the principal, I am the director of the center, and there are so many teachers, 25 teachers, we all work together. We eat the same food, we sit at the same table. In our discussions, there is no authoritarian position. There may be meetings where there are decisions to be taken. But when we are discussing philosophical issues or discussing what is the approach, multiple suggestions come up. So this freedom to know that speaking your mind or raising a question will not be punished, I think is very, very, very important in getting off the pedestal. That is one thing. The earlier two questions, I'm sorry, I lost track of that. Can you just repeat it for me, madam? I'll quickly finish. I know I'm running out of time. I'll quickly finish that.
第一个问题吗？
Can you kindly repeat those two questions?
Yes, quickly, yeah. About teacher training.
Yeah, exactly. About the teacher training, about the teacher pipeline, do we have to be constrained by the kind of the governmental certificate, or we are free from that kind of constraint? And where are the teachers come from, and how do we train our teachers? Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, okay. So the second part, where are the teachers coming from? How do you get good teachers? I say we have only unpolished gems in this world. The gems will have to get polished when they rub together, learn, work together, are serious to learning, they will learn. As regards the government teacher training requirement, it exists. It is very difficult today in India to have teachers who are untrained. But in our school, we do take a lot of people who have not been trained in the government system, because often the government system gives them a lot of theoretical background, but also because they encounter this difficulty in the schools, in the classrooms, they become very cynical. And there is also this one other question. When people come to a small school like this, which is attempting something completely different, the big question that comes up is, what is the significance of this school? And that itself makes people very cynical. Now, I would answer that question by saying, we don't have good models of schools which reflect our history, which reflect our another way another solution to the industrial revolution model school. We don't have other solutions. And the schools which have had the freedom have not exercised themselves and not innovated enough. And or maybe because they innovated in a way where the system just followed them. I think we need fresh thinking in this area to allow for different solutions to coexist. Like we have different models of cell phones and different models of almost everything in the world, but we seem to have only one model of schooling, which is largely sweeping the whole world. The age-wise segregated classrooms, subject-wise teaching is all that's going on, and we have so much of anxiety, so much pressure on exams, and we have the revolution of the machines coming in, which is saying you don't even need classes. So we have to think through this crisis rather carefully.
OK， 我们非常谢谢Gautama执行长哈，给我们带来一个非常不一样的一种思维啊，印度的还有这个 Krishnamurti 的这个思维，就是我们完全没有犯错的问题，我们没有权威的问题，大家都是平等的，互相学习啊，我们必须互相学习来面对这样一个全球还有整个世界快速变迁还非常大的这个危机啊，所以我觉得今天听了之前阅读他的文章，还有今天听他的演讲，他很就是需要大破之后才可能大立啊。我们很多的师资的问题、教育的问题，需要非常不一样的这个打破框架的这个思维。所以我们今天非常感谢我们的讲者为我们带来这样子的一种想象，而且它是真实的。在我们来讲还是想象，但是在印度他们已经在实践了，好，所以我们非常谢谢他。那我们今天也谢谢大家的参与，还有各位的提问。这一场时间也已经到了，好，谢谢大家 ，Thank you very much。